Hey guys, LaWaffles here. I know it's been a long time since I uploaded a video, and with so many changes and exciting updates coming this summer, I figured now is the best time to get back into making guides for Maplestory. Welcome to another episode of the Knowing Your series. We're going to be taking a closer look at one of the 4th job skills of Shadower, Smokescreen. And it is true that I have gone over this skill in both of my Shadower guides before, but there has actually been a fix that finally makes this skill work correctly on bosses. So today, we're going to be taking a closer look at Smokescreen, a couple of different ways to use this skill, along with some tips and tricks that you can keep in mind while using it. Upon activation, this skill will deploy a smoke in a decent sized area for 30 seconds, and as of this patch you will also be able to see how long is left on your smoke screen before it despawns by referring to the buff in the top right. It should also be noted that this buff is not affected by buff duration. The second the buff runs out, the smoke will despawn. But what does the smoke actually do? Well, while you are inside the smoke, you will not take any touch damage from monsters, environmental damage, and even a couple specific attacks, which include Lotus's electric field, Will's phase 2 webs, and many more. And even if you are unlucky to be hit by an attack, if the attack does percentage health damage, which happens to be the case with majority of the bosses in the game nowadays, the damage you take will be reduced by 10%. This easily turns many one-shots in the game into a non-lethal attack. But don't think this is a get-out-of-jail-free card, because this game will remind you the importance of watching the boss's attacks every chance it gets. Oddly enough, the damage reduction doesn't apply to everything. As you can see here, I'm still taking the full damage from Lotus in phase 1. Another thing to note is that the damage reduction effect only works for players who are in your party. This makes Smokescreen a pretty good defensive tool if needed, but in a general scenario, you're also going to want to save this for when you burst on a boss. A fix has been made where your Smokescreen now correctly applies the critical damage boost to bosses. The critical damage boost does not seem to be a buff to your character while you are inside the smoke, but rather a debuff to the monster, and because it acts like a debuff, it makes this skill also benefit teammates. This makes Smokescreen an extremely good skill when fighting in groups versus bosses like Lucid and Ursus. Additionally, while Smokescreen is active, staying inside the smoke will allow you to not break out of Darksight while attacking, and as many Shadower mains know, staying in Darksight means damage. Lots and lots of damage. A couple more things to keep in mind when using Smokescreen. While you can see the buff for Smokescreen to identify when it will run out, your party members will not be able to, which means you might want to consider warning them if smoke is about to run out. Another interesting thing is that if another Shadower in the map uses Smokescreen, you can use it like it's your own. As you can see here, I'm obviously in another Shadower's Smokescreen, however you can see that I'm constantly using attacks and I'm not breaking out of Darksight. And since the critical damage doesn't apply to your party members but rather a debuff to the monsters, I also benefit from the critical damage boost even though it's not my smoke. But do keep in mind that the damage reduction will only take effect if you are in their party, just something to keep in mind. Smokescreen has definitely become one of the core skills for any Shadower to use when bossing because of its amazing offensive and defensive capabilities. However, do keep in mind that these are two different things that this skill can be used for, which can definitely lead to some problems with cooldown management. Just remember to keep an eye on this skill's cooldown. And if you haven't already, I would recommend changing the quick slots in the bottom right so that it will be more convenient for you to keep an eye on. While this skill is one of the only skills that a Shadower has for soaking up percentage health damage, it's also a skill that increases your damage. Shadowers have some insanely good survivability, and it's only further backed up by this deployable AoE. Just remember to tell your team where your smoke is, because they may or may not have their transparency all the way down to 0. Okay, I don't know if you're gonna load in fast enough for this, but Chisu, whenever we hit— oh, okay, goodbye.
Jesus Christ. Are you shitting me?
Wait, what?